Say on behalf of Shenandoah County Historical Society, thank you for being here, and so glad you could make it and hear Billy. Quinton Castle is his name, but he is a talented historical actor who does living history. He recently starred as William Bily Lee in the nationwide cinematic release of The American Miracle, Our Nation is No Accident. His mission is to ensure that the whole of history, the diversity and all the contributors and individuals who shaped the American experience are accurately honored. Come on, sit down. He is portraying William Bily Lee, who was George Washington's slave servant who went with him all his life, was at Valley Forge with him. He's the only enslaved person that George Washington owned who he released upon his death. And so I'm not going to tell Billy's story. Billy's going to tell his story. Please welcome Bily Lee.
Thank you, madam, for that fine introduction. My name is William Lee. I'm George Washington's personal savior and slave. I was bought, purchased, as you will, with my brother Frank in 1768 for the amount of $63, which was quite a bit of money at the time. My brother Frank was placed in a house where he was considered the butler, head butler, if you will, worked his way up through the ranks as a head butler. And I was placed out in the stables where the general found out that I had an affinity for horses and for the dogs, different animals and such. Which in that way, everyone here knows that the general was a master in the horsemanship area. And so in order for him to have someone to ride with in fun and in hunting and different things, he had to have someone that had a great affinity for it in themselves. And he found out that I was a great rider. It was also said that if there was anybody at Mount Vernon who could ride just as well as him, it was me. We spent many days hunting, fishing, riding together before the war. And then one day he'd come and say, pack your things, we're leaving. That was the longest trip, if you will, that I've ever had in my life. There was a lot of bloodshed. There was a lot of turmoil, and if I do say so myself, those men fought valiantly on both sides, not just for the British, but for the Continentals as well. Now, during these times, you would hear stories of the general rushing off into battles as if he just disregarded his life. Well, what you don't know is, during those times, I was right along his side. The general would do some very crazy things. Some very, very crazy things. Just toss himself into danger. And I would have to push or different things to get him to just get out of the harm's way, if you will. I was, if you want to call it, Secret Service 000. The precursor to the precursors, if you will. Me and the general had many different adventures before, during, and after the war. We spent a sum of 31 years together. And in 1799, when the general passed, I was given my freedom and a pension for my efforts during the war. And I spent the rest of my days there at Mount Vernon as a shoe copper. Now, we want to go backwards in our story. I know some people are going to ask this. When the general became president, I was injured very badly. I had 2 of my legs had been busted up, broken very badly, so I was not able to accompany the general at the presidency, during the presidency. But upon his return to Mount Vernon, me and him had a mini day where we could talk and discuss different things. And I did get a chance to go up and spend some time there at the house, but I was shortly sent back to Mount Vernon, where I was to be a shoe copper. This is my life. These are my glories. And I'd like to think that without me being there to help the general and to succeed in the deliverance of messages and the deliverance of safety for the general, that maybe this great nation would not have been here today. Anybody have any questions?
What was the time frame? Was this after the French and Indian War? What was the time frame of your service?
I was bought in, me and my brother were bought in 1768, and I gained my freedom in 1799. So up to some of 31 years during that time period.
How long did you live?
I lived till I was about 70 actually. So it's quite old age, but you also have to think that because there was so much money that was spent on me and my brother that we were expected to be a very nice stature and a very clean, put together. So it was automatic that we would have longer lives because we spent time inside the house versus out
Other than the war.
Right, yeah, well, luck would have it. There were no bullets or bloodshed, of our own. But, there were some very, very close calls there during the war.
What was the scariest? I'm sorry.
The scariest, I think, would have to have been Valley Forge, just that time period of uncertainty. We had 2,000 men died of dysentery, and we are, as you will, battered, beaten, broken. We don't know if we're going to make it throughout this encampment. I think that was one of the very worst times during the war, if I do say so. Between that and crossing icy rivers, I can't swim.
Billy, did you have a family?
I did. I married a lady named Margaret Thomas from Philadelphia. Actually, me and the general had slight at odds about this. He did not like her, and I one day I came and professed my love to her and for her to him, and asked for him to send for her. She lived in Philadelphia. I had spent some time back and forth there, and throughout his time of knowing her, like I said, he did not like her. But due to my loyalties to him and to the times that I've spent with him, he could not. He wrote in his diaries that he could not deny me my love and affection for her. And he soon after sent for her. Now, however, it's unclear as to whether she was received by Mount Vernon after these documents and after these requests were sent, due to she was sick. She was sick during the time, and we're not sure if she died in transit to Mount Vernon or if she died there shortly after her arrival.
So do you have descendants to this day?
My brother Frank had children, and so his children lived on to have descendants. Yes.
How did they hurt your legs?
In riding accidents, actually, significantly. Two different occasions. Neither were actually during wartime. Both were. One happened during a surveying incident where I fell off a horse and injured my injured my ankle on my left side. And later on, closer to the presidency after the war, I injured my right knee in a similar accident.
Who was the older brother? Your brother Frank?
Frank was older.
Were you originally from Virginia?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I was of the Lee family, and small known fact that it's said that the Lee family and the Washington family were actually of kin, and that because I am of mulatto descent, that I could have been Lee's offspring.
Do you know where you're buried?
I'm buried there at Mount Vernon on the property, in the slave quarters burial site.
Does Frank Lee still have descendants alive today?
I believe so. But as you say, those things are kind of hard to follow, just because you don't have the writings and the books and as people are moved around during those times, you lose dossiers, you lose track of where they went, how they moved around. It's hard to figure out those types of things, especially now, so far away from each other.
you become such an excellent horseman?
Well, I believe that in my time at the Lee plantation, I probably spent a lot of time in the stables and in the barracks during that time, and so that probably gave me and my brother a little more agency as far as the prices that were paid for us as well, which is more often than not what people would have done during that time is to bought slaves for different particular jobs. So, but I'm sure that I probably would have picked those traits up in my prior situations.
Why did you not let go of slaves? Why did you not let go of slaves?
Say it again.
Why did he not release his slaves?
Well, slavery is it's a business, son. And if you can imagine that I can make money off of someone for pennies on the dollar and not have to pay them a significant wage, then that in itself makes sense. However, the mentality of it at that time was different from what it is today. And there are many of people who at that time did not understand what they were doing or understand the traumas that they were causing on others because they did not look at each other as equals. Now today we look at each other as equals and we understand the traumas and we understand the trials and tribulations of those people. But truthfully, those slaves and those people, I think there was a large disconnect simply because of backgrounds, as it is today, simply because of background. But if you just take out who you are and just realize that we are all people and we are all 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 feet, then you'll get the understanding that, hey, people are people, we're equals. And I think that there may be at that time, without that great shock to the system to take off and to create an economy for America, that maybe we may not be as great as we are today. But I can almost tell you that every great first world generation, every great first world country had some form of slavery in its histories. And it just kind of is what it is.
How far did you go in school, and did George Washington encourage you to have further education?
I was not very educated. There are no readings or writings of Bily Lee found. Well, there's none have been found. Rather. Now they could be few and far between, but we have to do that research there at Mount Vernon and at different places, Smithsonian places, different places like that, to try to find these writings. However, it's been 250 years and we haven't found them yet. So. But to answer your question, there wouldn't have been a lot of education in the slave community because they wouldn't have wanted them to have a lot of influence in their reading and education because they didn't want them to learn too much.
But George Washington didn't encourage it either then, or?
William's situation would have been a little different because he was sent out on certain adventures and certain missions to, deliver messages or to spy on certain things, and so he would have had to have read some, but he wouldn't have been as well read to maybe have written certain things because, as you say, certain things you don't want to be put into that community.
Can you expand on the mulatto and where your ancestors were from specifically? Did you know that?
No. So mulatto means of mixed race.
Okay.
So the term can mean, it's a broad term, if you will, but during that specific time in the 18th century, it was used for a person of mixed descent, clean skin, fair skinned black man who was not of European descent.
I was just wondering, because you were elevated in a way, being so close to George Washington, did other slaves resent you because of that?
There was some resentment, and I would say that William understood the resentment. He didn't necessarily try to hold it against people. Maybe he gave back to his community a little more than just as to show them that he's not, I'm on your side type of deal. And look, I've taken these these provisions to slide out, to sneak out to you all, to have, to help out those who are sick or who might not have been able to get the medicines that they needed or whatever the case may be. I would think that he would have done things like that.
Did Martha free the enslaved people when she died?
So, the way that worked was, upon Washington's death in his will, he wrote that William was to receive his freedom and a pension of $30 annually for his service during the war. It was also written that upon Martha's death, that the rest of his slaves would be freed. Now, about a year later, Martha would gather a few of her cousins and would free the rest of Washington's slaves due to her fear of mutiny. Now, you got to imagine, in the will it says upon her death. That's gonna kill Martha. But it's really good. That really would have been, on people's minds. Like, did I free him? Is she gone?
How many slaves were there?
There were about 450 on property.
Was he known to be a good slave owner? That's relative.
Out of character. There are stories of many of plantations that gave their slaves agents. There are many of them. However, he wasn't one of them, but he also tried to do as best as he could. Now we got to think that you spent 30 years with a man of opposite descent or different descent, and you start to appreciate him a little more. And so these were the things why he ended up writing the freedom in the will and everything else. But I would think that at some point or another, the dynamics started to change on the plantation at some point or other.
Were you upset when Washington died?
Well, I would have imagined that the man who owned you, maybe so much a friend, maybe not so much a friend. That's a tough question to ask. Yeah, that's a real tough one. You, sir. You putting it on me today, like. I really thought about that. If he really was saddened, or you gotta think, man. He got his freedom after the man passed. Even though he didn't, he actually spent the rest of his days there on Mount Vernon. And so, freedom is freedom, but not sure that he was more soft, more saddened or happy about it. Probably was like a.
Yeah. Do you know why he stayed there then? If he could have.
Well, if he could have, I think he doesn't have any use of his legs. He's a bit of a hermit at that point in his life.
And you could have became a slave again by someone else.
True. Correct. Because there was a many of instances where freed slaves, freed men, freed women would have gotten recaptured in different states. There's no law that says you can't do it at any time.
A free black man was vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
If he was Mr. Washington, he was less vulnerable.
Yes, right.
Did you try not to be president, or how did you feel like being president?
I think you're speaking to my boss, not me. I think that serving the future president for the United States probably was something that he really didn't understand, because we didn't know how big the presidency was or what it meant at that time. That was before a president or before a country, was fighting for our freedoms. But I also think that Will understood fighting for your freedoms. I think he understood what the message was in the 13 colonies and what they were trying to prove. And in turn, he thought that maybe by them winning their freedoms that would trickle down and he would get his own. and or that the group of enslaved themselves would get their own freedoms as well.
Any more questions?
Thank you all. I appreciate it.